Thousands of years ago, a fierce war of Rephaim giants raged through the Near East. A caliber of such great onslaught could today only be imagined through fantastical works of fiction. For 12 years, the League of Rephaim nations plummeted their way through the land of Canaan. In the 14th year, it reached a boiling point. In the Valley of Sidim, 5 armies, including Sodom and Gomorrah, took their stand of rebellion. The battle that ensued can only be compared to the likes of film, such as Wrath of the Titans, or the epic battles of the Lord of the Rings. Though the 5 kings of the West stood their ground, ultimately their people were taken captive as a spoil of war. Unfortunately for the 4 kings of the East, one of their captives happens to be the nephew of the brave man of God.
Welcome back to another episode of Ancient Echoes. Tonight, man, we're going to be going over Genesis 14, the War of the Giants, the dueling demigods, if you will. We're going to.
I like it.
If you are a returning viewer, man, thank you so much. We appreciate all of your support. If you are new here, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, man. Make sure you ring that bell because YouTube likes to play tricks with us, as they do many other channels as well, man. So awesome, bro. I'm really excited about tonight's episode. I can't wait to get into it, man. What all have you got in store for us?
Welcome, everybody. This is the War of the Giants. I've been really excited to get here and talk about this some. This is our Genesis 14 commentary, and we're going to be covering the first half of tonight. We have clips and videos and ancient texts and all kinds of stuff to get into tonight. So we're going to get started with a little clip just as an introduction, and then we're going to dive into the scripture. We're covering 16, 17 verses tonight, so we're going to read through and then recap. So let's go ahead and get into it. And this is the words of the Giants, guys. Let's check this out.
Here we go.
At this time, Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elisar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goyim, went to war against Bera, king of Sodom, Bisha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemiba, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar. All these latter kings joined forces in the valley of Sidim, the Salt Sea. For 12 years they had been subject to Chedorlaomer, but in the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings allied with him went out and defeated the Rephaites in Ashtaroth Karnaim, the Zuzites in Ham, the Emites in Sheva Kiriathaim, and the Horites in the hill country of Seir, as far as El Paran near the desert. Then they turned back and went to En-Mishpat, that is, Kadesh, and they conquered the whole territory of the Amalekites, as well as the Amorites who were living in Hazazon Tamar. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is, Zoar, marched out and drew up their battle lines in the valley of Sidim against Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of Goyim, Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elisar. 4 kings against 5.
So that's a nice little icebreaker to get us into what we're talking about. So we're here in Genesis 14, and Bronson's going to go ahead and read through this, and then we're going to break it down line by line. And as we go along, we have some clips to go with everything. So hang in there with us, guys. It's going to be a good episode.
Yes, sir. All right, let's do this thing, man. Genesis 14, verse 1, and it reads, "And it came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elisar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations, that these made war with Bera, king of Sodom, Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, and Shemiber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, which is Zoar. All these were joined together in the valley of Sidim, which is the Salt Sea. 12 years they served, I have such a hard time pronouncing his name, man. Let's call him Chedorlaomer. There you go. 12 years they served Chedorlaomer, And in the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year came Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him, and smote the Rephaims and Ashtaroth Karnaim, and the Zuzims in Ham, and the Amims in Shava Kirithaim. So we've already got a bunch of Rephaims coming into battle, man. A humongous war full of 5 different nations, 9 different nations of giants. The Horites. Yeah.
And if you go, well, I guess we could break it down in just a minute. I'll let you do your thing, sir. My fault.
Go ahead. Oh, you're straight, bro. It's all good. And the Horites in their Mount Seir of El Paran, which is by the wilderness. And they returned and came to Mishpat, which is Kadesh, and smote all the country of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites that dwelt in Hazazon Tamar. And there went out of the kings of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, and the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, the same as Zoar, and they joined battle with them in the vale of Sidim. And I don't know why that name just gives me like dyslexia, bro. With
It almost feels like it has an extra syllable in it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I want to call him Cheeto so bad. It's Cheeto.
And I'm not even sure on that pronunciation. I just, Chedorlaomer is what I've always said in my head as I was reading.
Yeah, the experts in the comments will let us know.
I'm sure.
With Chedorlaomer, the king of Elam, and with Tidal, the king of nations, and Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elasar, 4 kings with 5. And the vale of Sidim was full of slime pits, and the king of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, and they fell there. And they that remained fled to the mountain. And they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah, and all their victuals, and went their way. And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. And there came one that had escaped, and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the plain of Mamre the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and brother of Aner, and these were confederate with Abram. And when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants, born in his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan. And he divided himself against them, he and his servants, by night, and smote them, and pursued them unto Hobah, which is on the left hand of Damascus. And he brought back all the goods, and also brought again his brother Lot and his goods, the women also, and the people. The king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return from the slaughter of Chedorlaomer, and of the kings that were with him at the valley of Shaveh, which is the king's dale. That's as far as we'll go into 14 tonight. Guys, we're going to have some amazing content coming up real soon, so make sure you keep a lookout for that, because this chapter is really cool.
Yeah, if you're just listening and not watching, he highlighted Melchizedek. We're going to be covering Melchizedek in our next Genesis commentary, so stay tuned for that next week. That's going to be a really good one. We've been doing study for a long time on Melchizedek. We're going to be in Hebrews a lot, I'm sure. We've been looking into some ancient texts that talk about Melchizedek, and just trying to get a good idea, because it's one of the great mysteries of the Bible. So don't miss out next week when we put that out. It's going to be a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah, man.
All right, so let's get to the breakdown, man.
Here we go.
So what we like to do is, when we go through these names and these places, when we're going through here on the Blue Letter Bible, the advantage of using Blue Letter Bible is we can go into the definitions and find different things and concordances. And let's go ahead and look at the definitions here. Let's go through these first 4 kings.
Let's do it.
The first one will be Amraphel.
Your code is H569. Amraphel. His name actually translates to the Sayer of Darkness, Fall of the Sayer, which is interesting because in the time of Samuel, we read that when Saul is alive, people weren't necessarily called prophets back then. They would say, let's go see the Sayer. And so you have to wonder what that means, the Sayer of Darkness. It's almost synonymous with the prophet of darkness. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool. So Amraphel, go ahead.
Let's go back up just a little bit. Let's not go too fast. See, the king of Shinar, Babylon, perhaps Hammurabi. So a lot of people attribute this Amraphel to being Hammurabi. There's some other people that are attributed to. We're going to get into in just a moment. We got some Josephus passages coming up. We're going to check out, and some things from some Hebraic sources. But the common knowledge on this is that it was most likely Hammurabi.
Right. Now, Hammurabi is the guy that wrote that code, right? When we get that famous term "eye for an eye" and "hand for a hand" type of thing, that's our guy.
Yeah, a lot of laws taken out of Hammurabi's code. It was very influential worldwide, even in the West.
And if I'm not mistaken, now this is going way back into high school here. I think that's our first written law that we discovered historically.
That I know of, yes. Typically, the stories of the ancient world go like this, and I won't get too far down the rabbit hole, but typically in the ancient world, you would have the beginning of civilization. Their god would show up, and the first thing the god would do would teach them reading and writing, and then give them their law. So, and that seems to be a cycle that repeats itself in all early civilizations. And I'm sure there are some that have different stories, but typically that's what happens. The god shows up, teaches them civilization, but the first thing they teach is reading and writing, so they can write out the law, and the god or entity or whatever it may be can impart their law on them, so they live within the confines or do the things that that entity wants them to do.
Wow, that's really cool. And I think in Jubilees is where we saw where God taught Abram Hebrew, if I remember correctly.
I believe so. I'm a little iffy on that.
Yeah.
I think it was. I think it was.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, let's go on to our next king. That was Mr. Amraphel.
Is there anything in that Chaldean lexicon?
It essentially says that it is, I'll read it for you, Amraphel, the king of Shinar, Babylonia, in the time of Abraham. And so,
thanks so much, guys. That really helps a lot.
Right, exactly.
Almost like I could have just read the Bible.
Exactly right.
All right, so let's check out the next one. Who we got here? Arioch?
The next one is Arioch. Your code is H746. And his name actually translates to lion-like, which is very interesting in itself, man. If you have not watched...
I was about to say, if you guys haven't seen the cryptid video, we cover a lot of the lion-like people, a lot of the cryptids and hybrids and strange creatures. So if you guys are really into that and want to go in-depth on the lion-like and kind of go into some of the crazier stuff, we have an episode called Christian Conspiracy. What is it? Cryptid Hybrids. That's a Christian conspiracy playlist. So if you guys are into that kind of far out stuff, we cover a lot of different things in that.
Most certainly. And this lion-like man, Mr. Arioch, he is the ancient king of Elisar, ally of Chedorlaomer. Dude, I don't know what it is. All right, so down here in your lexicon, it says that he is the captain of the royal guard in the court of Babylon. Properly. Oh, okay. Thank you. Properly, the lion-like man, and that's essentially all it has to offer on these people. We're going to be going into a little bit of a deeper dive on them here in just a second on each different king to see what the internet has to offer. But as you know how Ancient Echoes does, man, we check the Bible first. Our next one is the big man himself. And his name translates to the handful of sheaves.
And if we had a pretty good idea, but we went and looked it up, and that would be like wheat or barley, like the heads of the stalks of barley.
Bound together, kind of like a miniature Bay of Hail type of thing, you know. So this is actually the king of Elam, the person whose camp Abraham actually infiltrated with his, was it 312 or 318? A small group
318.
318 of his trained servants, whatever that means. You don't know how bad I wish Abraham is like out there with the black belt on teaching his servants how to fight. That'd be so cool. But they infiltrate the camp and they take Lot back, and this is the man that they ended up going over to. So he seems to be, I guess, the guy in charge, man. It's hard to tell, I guess.
It seems that way. Now, when we dive into Amraphel a little bit deeper, and we're going to, guys, so you guys who know where we're going with this understand, it would seem like he would be the one that would be in charge, but everything seems to point to the leader of this particular campaign as being Chedorlaomer out of Elam. So, all right, let's go on to the next one, and then we'll get into the let's show that map just so everybody has a good idea where everybody's coming from in the areas in case you're not familiar.
Absolutely.
The next one here is title.
Code is H8413, and his name is translated to Great Son, S-O-N, the Sun, chief of various nomadic tribes and an ally of Chedorlaomer. So various nomadic tribes, it sounds a little bit different than some of these other kings. They sound like they have nations, whereas
Yes.
title,
Well, let's I'll tell you what, let's look at the Chaldee lexicon real quick, and then we'll go back and let's look a little bit more into title, because he seems to be a little different.
Sure. All we have from her lexicon, it just says fear, reverence, from the Samaritan root to fear, title. So I guess that would be a great son, you know what I mean, would be revered or feared. So I guess that is kind of synonymous. That makes sense.
All right, let's go back to the text real quick on title.
Cool. So here in Genesis 14:1, it says that title is the king of nations.
All right, let's pull that up again, and let's go to that nations there.
Nations. Your code is H1471.
Oh,
and
Goy, the Goyim.
Goy. This means nation, people, usually, most of the time, of non-Hebrew people, of descendants of Abraham or of Israel. A swarm of locusts or other animals. I love it whenever we use this word. We've done it in other episodes. I love the question mark that comes next to this. Goyim? It's just,
Yeah, typically used to describe like cattle or something subhuman.
yeah.
And don't feel bad, guys. We're goys ourselves. All right.
Yeah, locusts. We're a pest, if you will, but that's not today's episode, I guess.
All right. Well, let's see here. So we see that. All right, go back down to the definition just a little bit further. Let's just show the Goyim again and just kind of check this out.
Yeah. Around here.
So it'll go up just a little bit. Yeah, the Gentiles, and you see Gentiles and Goy. Gentile, Goy, and nations can be interchangeably used. It all means the same thing. Okay. Now, if you didn't watch in our Genesis chapter 10 videos, which is totally fine, but there's a lot of good stuff in there, especially when we're talking about these nations, because that's what Genesis 10 is. It's the table of nations, and you go through all of the genealogies, and it may seem boring, but we really broke it down in depth. Now, we came across something that when we were studying for that never jumped off the screen at me. Now, Bronson, could we go over there to Genesis 10?
Yeah.
And it says that title is the king of the nations, or of the Goyim, or you could say Gentiles if you like. But right here, now it's starting off in Genesis. If we go up just a little bit just to show everybody, this is starting out the table of nations, and it's talking about the sons of Japheth. Okay. Now, when it goes through, the sons of Japheth and some of the grandchildren and everything else, and then in 10:5 it says, "By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their land, everyone after their tongue, after their families and their nations." And then it goes on to talk about Ham, and then it further on to talk about Shem. Okay. Now let's go to the definition here just to show that Gentiles is the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so it has all of those all of those Shem, Ham, and Japheth. All three have the nations at the end of it, and we're back over here talking about Japheth now. Now at the bottom, you see of the Gentiles, Goy, but also going further down when it talks about nations, in their nations, you have Goy there as well. Now Japheth is the only one that has that twice.
Yes.
Okay. It specifies the isles of the Gentiles. So the Gentiles, it seems that Japheth and his descendants are the only ones classified as being Gentiles or Goyim in that term. Because you have the Gentiles there, the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, and then you have in their nations. Now you have in their nations also at the end of Ham's lineage, and you also have it at the end of Shem's lineage. But the only people that are defined as being Gentiles is exclusively this line of Japheth. Now, as we go back to Genesis 14 and take a look here at title again. No. We go back to the actual chapter, to the verse. All right. Yeah, title King of Nations. So what I would think here, what this leads me to believe, and I don't have smoking gun proof, but it would lead me to believe that Tidal must have been the head of some kind of confederacy of Japhethites. That's what would make most sense to me. I don't know, Ross, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly correct. I mean, I think may now be the appropriate time to pull up a map and say, you know what I'm saying? And show just kind of that we have Shinar in one place, Elisar in another, Elam in another. That's really going, and that might be backwards on camera, really going that way towards the east. I don't know which way is east on camera right now, but somebody's got to come from another direction.
Well, having all these kings in the confederation was lead you to believe, they're probably close by, and I guess relatively, yeah. But if you're talking about, horse and chariot and all that type of stuff, they were not close. This is a lot of kings over a vast area of land. So let's pull up that map, like you were saying, and take a look at that. I think we found a really, really good map to show this here. Yeah, if we could zoom on in on that. Yeah. Right. Okay. So you have over here, starting at the east, you have Elam. Right there. Okay. Then you have Shinar, which would be Babylonia. Then going up, you have, let's see here. Arioch sounds Hurrian, so I guess that's where they're trying to put him at, is right there in Turkey and northern Syria. Then you have Tidal, which sounds Hittite, and there you go. If you followed along in our, when we were talking about in Genesis 10, where all these people could be at, we talked about how the nations were divided between Noah's 3 sons in the book of Jubilees. And right there where Tidal would be right on the line. Yeah, right there. Exactly where Ross's cursor is. Good job, bro. Right there. And that's pretty dang close, man. Real close. You did a good job pointing that out. Right there is where the dividing line between Japheth and Shem is, according to Jubilees. So we have a king there, a king Tidal, that could have been a Hittite or somebody that was, ahead of a confederation of descendants of Japheth there. So that's why he was pointed out as the king of the Goyim, or the ruler of the Goyim up there. He was probably the head big dog of the Japhethites at the time. So you have this, this confederation of these 4 kings that stretches over a vast area. And the area in modern times would be Iran in the east, where Elam is, Iraq, where Babylonia is. And you can even see, right there, and Iran over there in the east, right above Elam, stretching all the way into northern Syria and southern Turkey and into mainland Turkey. So this was a lot of people with a lot of resources stretching almost the entire Near East, coming to war against these 5 kings in the plain. Now, there you go. That's really where they have Sodom. They put Sodom a little, I guess that's about right. Could we zoom in on that a little bit more, or is that the max we got? There we go. Yeah, right there in the south of that Dead Sea area.
Right. That's where those slime pits were in the chapter.
So if we're looking at this here, and what it looks like, from what we could tell, it seems that Elam and Shinar marched north and went up into Syria, and everybody then came south on that roadway there. Yeah. That seems to be the route that they went to.
Right. And we're seeing this may be hard to pick up. I'll zoom in as good as I can. These golden arrows, I believe, is the direction in which their armies fled away. As it said that they had chased them as far as even towards Damascus.
Yeah, they fled to the mountain too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, right in that area. All right, let's go back to the text, man.
That stuff's
And I
so
know
much.
some of you guys may be saying, where are the Giants at? Brother, we are getting to it, and we have a lot on that. So let's just go ahead and start breaking down a little bit of these kings here
Yes.
in verse 2.
That's
There's
right.
not a whole lot on these guys, but let's go ahead and pull up the definitions on that. And then we have another clip we can show here in just a few moments that will break this down very well.
So here's our first guy. His name is Bera. 1298 is your code. And his name literally translates to the son of evil. He's just a king of Sodom. And then even down your lexicon, king of Sodom. That's all that the resources Blue Letter has to offer can give you.
He sounds like a nice guy.
Yeah. Right. Our next guy is Bersha. Your code is H1306. And his name means with iniquity. He's a king of Gomorrah, and it's with wickedness. Lexicon, son of wickedness. And here's the thing. I mean, these things aren't necessarily limited. I wouldn't call them weak in information. A lot of good information comes from a good lexicon and a good Strong's Concordance. You can get really good stuff. Or at least
the
good
bad thing
blocks.
is that when there's nothing there, you can't really put much.
Yeah, that's
and
it,
this
man.
is so long ago when we're looking at these things that there's not a whole lot on these guys. Probably because they were killed thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. I would love to be able to find some writing from these times, even from these kings of Sodom and Gomorrah. But if that was there, that's most likely been found and is hidden away somewhere in a private collection.
Well, I'll tell you what, if there was anything left of Sodom, you know what I'm saying? Like, next king is Sinab, H8134. And his name means splendor of the father. He's the king of Admah in the time of Abraham. I'm so interested in some of these names and what they could actually be insinuating. Father's tooth may be what we're getting. That might be an Aramaic translation there, father's tooth. So I guess his dad was probably maybe the founder of Admah, and this guy may have just taken over. I'm totally speculating from the dark there, so whatever. Shemeber is your next one. He is the king of Zeboim, H8038, 8038. And his name means lofty flight, the king of Zeboim, and an ally of the king of Sodom. And, sorry, I misread a word there. His name just means soaring high, height, the king of Zeboim. Now, if you got a name and you're a Rephaim and you're pretty tall, soaring high, height, that's a pretty good name to go with. So there we are. So we've got an evil man, wickedness, this guy's flying high, somebody's the son of a big king, and then here's your guy, the king of Bela, which is Zoar.
Let me point this out. This is the only king that doesn't have a name. Bela is a place, and when you see which is Zoar, you would think, oh, maybe that's his name. Nope, that's just another name for Bela, the place. This king itself is not named. So I do want to point that out. That's a little different because the 4 kings are all named, and the first 4 of the set of 5, these that we're reading now that were on the plane, this is the only one that's not named.
Mm-hmm. Sure, true. I checked into a couple of commentaries on that, and one of the guys on there couldn't tell you what his name is. I forgot. I read like 4 or 5 of them. He said that there was a chance, at least in his day and age, that they were speculating that perhaps it was such a smaller kingdom, or in other words, that when Moses was writing down the Torah, perhaps this was just such a mean, evil, wicked guy that they decided to leave his name out completely for some reason. So that's
we've seen that, especially when we were talking about Canaan and our Foxhead and all that type of stuff. We have seen that happen before in the writings of Moses.
Yeah,
that,
names being omitted.
Yeah, so we have seen that. It just makes you wonder.
Right. So Bela just means destruction. They're giving him, somebody in the Bible, a couple people in the Bible have been named this. But when you come down here to number 4, you get one of the 5 cities of the plain, which was spared at the intercession of Lot and received the name of Zoar. So even in the definition of this word, you end up getting that it received the name Zoar, as we see many places in the Bible whose names changes. Devouring, something devoured, destruction. There says the city of the southern shore of the Dead Sea. I hate to do too much speculating, but there's only so much evidence out there. I wonder if maybe this place had some type of collateral damage from the destruction of Sodom.
I would think so. Now, when we're getting into the descriptions of Sodom, and when we're talking about where Lot went, it talks about Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities that were around there, or the towns that were around there. And I believe Bela would be one of those. And they were all seem to be kind of in confederation with each other. That will obviously because they're fighting with each other, but even on a day-to-day trade, commerce, probably customs, their gods were most likely the same. They were all very close in proximity to each other from what we understand.
Sure. Even if there was maybe, I don't know, 100 miles, I'm no climate scientist, but I imagine a lot of fire and brimstone, whether it's mercury, sulfur, whatever falling from the sky, would have a tremendous effects on the climate of that area, affecting the air, the plants, animals, and water, et cetera, et cetera. Zoar is H6820. It means it means insignificance. A city at the southeast end of the Dead Sea, grouped with Sodom and Gomorrah as being one of the 5 cities slated for destruction by God, spared by Lot's plea at the place of his refuge. Now, we've just seen a pattern in some things that when it has one name and it changes to another name, and you get something defined like this, insignificance, you got to wonder what the Hebrews were thinking at the time. We're like, we really don't like that place. It's insignificant.
I think it's probably insignificant because it didn't exist.
Maybe, man. It's so funny. Town at the southern shore of the Dead Sea. And that's all we've got on that, man. So far what we've done is we've gone through our 5 kings. These guys were on that map. They were on that outer ring. And then we went through our 4 kings. These guys are hanging out on the southern side of Levant.
And four, then 5, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Yeah. And all these were joined together in the valley of Sidim, which is the Salt Sea. So the story goes that they were serving Chedorlaomer for 12 years. And on the 13th year, they said enough is enough. And in the 14th year, Chedorlaomer said, yeah, we're going to see about that. And so he comes down there, and it says that he smote the Rephaims and Ashtaroth Kenarim, the Zuzims in Ham, and the Amims in Shaveh, the Horites in Mount Seir, unto El Paran, which is by the wilderness. And they returned.
Let's stop there.
Yeah.
All right. So the kings that were with him, and they smote the Rephaims. Okay. They smote the Zuzims, and they smote the Emims. Okay. And the Horites. Now, let's go back up and look at those 5 kings. Amazingly, none of those kings were kings of that area.
Right. So
we're talking about different people here. Okay. So as we go down and look at these again, you have the Rephaims. And guys, if you know anything, those are the giants, and we've covered them in depth in our Nephilim giants video and our cryptid video. We've covered them
Genesis 6
to death. But I tell you what, let's pull up the definitions on these just for anybody that's new. These are giants, people. These are all of the giants after the flood, except in one portion when the scouts that went out for Caleb and Joshua, and they came back describing, oh, the Nephilim are in the land. And they were saying, I believe personally, as an exaggeration to scare the people even more so they wouldn't have to fight them. But that's the only time that they're mentioned after the flood as being Nephilim. Any other time, they use the word Repha or Rephaim to describe these giants. There it is, giants, Rephaim, old tribe of giants. Now, here we go, guys. Now we're getting into the war of the giants.
Yes. And so this really does look like it's a campaign. I mean, these guys are going down there, like we'll just list them off quickly. The Rephaims and Ashtaroth, the Zuzims, the Amims, the Horites, down here the Amalekites, the Amorites. These are all names that you see up until Joshua and beyond, and they're always associated with being giants and Rephaim.
But all right, so let's go back to 14:5. And so we show the definition there for the Rephaim. So let's look at the Zuzimims.
Sure.
Zuzims, if you will.
The Zuzims. Here we go. This is a little bit further down. Your code is H2104. The Zuzims. It means roving creatures, an ancient people of uncertain origin, perhaps inhabitants of ancient Ammon, east of the Jordan.
All right, so we have people without a patriarch.
It never fails, man. Never fails.
It seems to come up quite a bit when you're looking at these tribes.
Sure. When we say an ancient Transjordanic people, otherwise unknown, abode apparently in the land of Ammon or Ammon between Bashan and Moab. Now, if you anywhere near Bashan, you already know what's going on over that way. Moab at this point in time wasn't even called that because we don't even have Lot's children being taken care of yet. But yeah, where is their patriarch? That's the question. Of a nation, the Aborigines of the land of the Ammonites, inhabiting the borders of Palestine.
All right, so hold on 1 second. Let's think about that.
Sure.
They were the Aborigines, so when the Ammonites got there, they were already there.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty crazy. All right, let's
Yes.
go and look at the next people. We won't take too long because a lot of these we've already covered in other videos, so we don't want to double dip too much. But let's just show that these people were giants and they did have untraceable roots, which like we talked about last week, sends off alarm bells. Like, okay, so they have no patriarch. Where did they come from?
Gotta wonder. Amim is H368. Their name means terror. So, geez. This is the ancient inhabitants of Moab.
All right, so we were talking about that area. It wouldn't have been called Moab yet because of Lot yet, but they're just given that name because everybody knows where it is. Now it was in that area.
Yes.
So before them, they were dwelling, the last group of people, the Zuzims, were dwelling in the area between Bashan, which is known for Og and having giants in that area all the time, and these Amims, which are called terrors, that were in Moab. So they were up there with the giants and the terrors, in that area. So no good, no bueno.
No good, no bueno at all. They are so-called from the terror which they caused to their worshippers, a very ancient people who are mentioned as having occupied the land of Moabites before them, of course. Very interesting. Terrors and idols, so called from the terror which they caused to their worshippers. That is that's thought-provoking. I don't even know what to say to that just yet. My brain goes a lot of places just thinking that.
I tell you what, let's go ahead and go to the clip.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and go to the clip and break it up a little bit, and then we'll come back here and break this down some. Now, this clip is from Now You See TV, one of our favorite channels, Christian channels. This is from years ago, and this was with one of my favorite authors and commentators on the giants and the ancient world and everything. I have his book right here, Mr. Gary Wayne, and he's going to talk about this. And probably should have said this a little earlier, but this was the first war mentioned in the Bible, the very first one. And he's going to break down a little bit of what we've been talking about here and go into some extra detail. So let's go ahead and get into this.
Here we go.
Hey guys, Bronson from the future here. Just to let you know, the following clip has something that some viewers may consider to be mature content. Just wanted to give a fair warning in case your children are around. 3, 2, 1.
Where we do see them first show up with wars is we go to the War of Four Kings against Five. Now that comes about in Genesis 14 after Abraham has moved to Canaan. And Lot has moved into the city of Sodom, so just before the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And so you have this Mesopotamian alliance of kings that is upset that a lot of the kingdoms of the Sodom and Gomorrah region, who were vassal kingdoms at that time, are no longer paying the tribute. And so this starts a war. And the nations that these Mesopotamian kings, alliance of four kings, fight against are all listed as Nephilim kings and kingships. So they're fighting against the Amorites in the Sodom and Gomorrah area. So they're led by Rephaim kings like Sihon and Og and those types of individuals. Those kings are all Rephaim or another form of Rephaim. You have them fighting the Emim, you have them fighting the Horim, you have them fighting the Amalekim. Every nation that is listed in Genesis 14 that they're fighting against are either hybrid Nephilim or purebred Nephilim. And you get the Amalekim in there. And Amalek doesn't show up till later as being the offspring of Eliphaz and Timnah. Right, so I think he adopts the Amalek name as the patriarch for the Amalekim, or is named that after the patriarch of the Amalekim. So these are all giant nations, and this is like the greatest battle since before the flood, and we have no idea how big some of these battles might have been before the flood, but this literally settled in that early period the whole geopolitical network, because they went right through the Middle East and right down almost to Egypt in that war. And just took out all of these giant kings and made them vassals again.
Do you have any thoughts as to where the location of these battles may have taken place? Do you think, I know there's some thoughts that it might be, around the Dead Sea area, but is there any chance that these battle zones could have been found archaeologically?
Yeah, I've not seen anything to indicate that, but I'd be shocked that they haven't been found. I'd be shocked that the Uparts wouldn't have been taken and hidden away. It just, to me, it would be, these would be massive battles. They would have massive types of weapons that would be left over, right? And arrowheads and spearheads and bones and stuff like. So I think they have been found, but we're not going to know about it until, they're ready to tell us about it. And certainly, from a Gnostic perspective, Sodom and Gomorrah were cities of light. They were cities of knowledge. There are cities where some of their versions of giants first were planted after the flood. So again, you get that Sodom narrative that's going on with these Nephilim, and you have the sexual sins going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. That also seems to apply, and that the people of Sodom wanted to have sex with these men that they somehow recognized as angels, who would either have some sort of changeling ability or they wanted to have homosexual sin. You pick your poison on that one, but they literally wanted to have sex with them. And I think this is why we get that reflection in Jude and 2 Peter and also in Luke with the days of Noah that he's talking about, this time the days of Sodom, for his second coming. It's connecting these sexual violations in those particular passages.
Very interesting.
My apologies for that word being used. If you're watching the show with your children, I forgot that he used that. I should have said something to begin with.
And post those wars, they did have the strong presence there in Canaan, but do we see them in any other parts of Scripture named off, like in Egypt or or far in Babylon, or do they kind of congregate in Canaan?
Well, no, you get a cross-pollination and a setting up of major dynasties. The Egyptian dynasty, although that initially gets settled by...
That man is a wealth of knowledge, bro. And may I just take a second to say the swoop on this man's bangs is unrivaled.
I'd like to have Gary on one night. I think we need to reach out to him in email or over Facebook or something, because I actually have his new book, the second part of the Genesis 6 conspiracy, coming. Should have been here today, but it'll be here tomorrow, and I'll be pulling different things out of that book to share with you guys, and using it as a reference book, more or less. So we need to get Gary on and ask him some of the tough questions that we've been coming across, and kind of been finding to stop to some of these answers.
And if we could get Mr. Wayne on the show, that would be a show that I'd do a lot less.
Yeah, guys, if any of you guys know Gary out there, let him know we'd love to talk to him.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to Genesis 14.
Sure.
And all right, so what we talked about here is we talked about the Amalekites, and it seems like this is a whole campaign, not even just against these 5 kings from the plain, but they're taking out a lot of these giants and these giant peoples as they're coming around there. Let's go back up to verse 5, and we'll just get a list of all these people they're taking out.
Sure. Oops. So right here in the 14th year, the kings that were with him smote the Rephaims and Ashtaroth. The Zuzims.
All right, so we have the Rephaims, the Zuzims, the Memes, all right, the Horites, and they come down here to smote all the country of the Amalekites and the Amorites. Good Lord. And then and there went out the king of Sodom. Okay, so now here comes the king of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Bela coming in here to fight down in this area, the Vale of Sidim, as they say, right there just south of the Dead Sea, where a lot of people say where the Dead Sea is today. That's just fascinating. And then what Gary was saying there was tying the Sodom and Gomorrah region into being giants, and they had a lot of, and he used the word Nephilim, but I'm going to say Rephaim, as I believe that's what they were after the flood, were Rephaim. Now, as we come down here, now we've been able to tie in to all of those 5 kings of the plain and that area as being in confederation with giants and being giants themselves. Now, where we were struggling a little bit is to tie in the 4 kings as to being giants. We are not so sure that they are. Now, a lot of people say like the Hittites were a hybrid race, so you would have Tidal up in that area, and Arioch up in that area, and a lot of people tie those into being some hybrid human giant race, which would just be smaller giants. But that's where we have a little trouble. Now, let's go and look at the Wikipedia we have on this King Amraphel.
Sure.
Now, we talked about in the definitions earlier, we were talking about King Amraphel. Yeah, if we just go to his page.
I don't know why it's scrolling so slow. Here we go.
All right. So it says right here when we look at it that he was most likely, if we go down the modern identifications, most likely Hammurabi. And that's what we saw when we pulled up the translations and pulled up the lexicon, that he was related to Hammurabi. Now, if we go down, let's keep going down in rabbinic tradition. Look at this. Rabbinic sources such as the Midrash identify Amraphel with Nimrod. This is also asserted in the 11th chapter of the Sefer HaYashar, attested from the early 17th century. And Nimrod dwelt, and this is reading from that Sefer HaYashar, and Nimrod dwelt in Babel and he there renewed his reign over the rest of his subjects. Now remember, guys, this is after the tower, so he's renewing his reign over the rest of his subjects. And he reigned securely, and the subjects and princes of Nimrod called his name Amraphel, saying that at the tower his princes and men fell through his means. Okay, so we see here in the Sefer HaYashar that Nimrod was in Babel. He dwelt there, so in Babylonia, and he renewed his reign over his subjects, and he reigned securely. And they called him Amraphel, saying that the tower his princes and men fell through his means.
Lines up with Jubilees. I mean, at least time-wise, that he's alive during Abram's lifetime. We see that, of course. And in Jubilees, you don't see the death of Nimrod until after Esau is born.
Now, as we go down here into Genesis Rabbah 42, it says Amraphel was called by 3 names: Cush, after his father, which is the son of Ham; Cush, Nimrod, because he established rebellion in the world; and Amraphel, as he declared, I will cast down. Now, so this, in the rabbinic mind, this Amraphel is Nimrod, and he goes by these 3 names: Cush, Nimrod, and Amraphel. So I just thought that was very interesting, and it does line up with the timeline set in Jubilees that, and I believe in Yashar, right?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, that Abraham, especially his father Terah, and I believe that was in Jubilees, that Terah worked directly for Nimrod as his chief idol maker.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and that was Abraham's father, and Abraham had to flee because Nimrod was trying to kill him. Okay? And the whole story with Lot's father and everything else, and it seems to tie in pretty well, especially seeing how Abraham always seems like he takes the fatherly role. If you're interested in that, go back and watch that episode. Which episode was that? That was Nimrod, not Nimrod, but Abraham in the House of Idols.
Yes,
2 episodes ago in the Genesis commentary. So yeah, definitely check that out. We go into that in depth, so I won't any further. But I tend to believe that Amraphel is Nimrod.
It makes total sense to me.
Not because the rabbinic sources say it, but mainly because that lines up at the timeline.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And lines up with Jubilees very nicely. And it also makes sense when you see, reading through Genesis and see the relationship between Abraham and Lot. But that story makes a lot of sense. So go back and check that out. Matter of fact, we'll put it in one of the corners at the end of this video, Abraham in the House of Idols, so it'll be easy for you. You can go back and check that out.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. It's a really kind of, I can play around with the idea a little bit that by this time, when he renewed his reign, when there's that time period after the tower falls and he's struggling to maybe get some of his kingdom back together, it's not unlikely at all that someone else would have rose up to power, and that would have been our other guy who we see everyone sort of making league under in this war. The guy I keep calling Cheeto.
Chedorlaomer.
That's the one. Yeah. So, we see that all the time. The second you lose your authority, somebody else is going to stand up and take something.
The only thing, all the nations are divided between their languages, their tongues, and all that type of thing. So, what makes me wonder if Amraphel was Nimrod, going back in those Sumerian stones and anything we can find that's attributed to Nimrod, he's a very prideful guy. I just do not see him falling under the command of somebody else. It just does not track to me. I believe what we're looking at here is something else. Almost like that he was trying to regain his kingdom and set himself back up in Babel and try and get things going after the languages were confused. I wonder if this was, what he saw as an easy win, joining a confederacy with these people, to elevate himself again and to solidify him as the rightful ruler after what they would have seen as a major failure at the tower. is to
Nicely
align
said.
himself with this confederation, and I assume coming out of Elam, and especially if they're going and killing all these giant tribes, this must have been a massive army with the top technology at the time. I think that's what it was, is that he saw this as an easy win and a way to magnify himself and to get a win in the column after the major L he took at the tower.
Right. No, dude, that's absolutely right. And it may even be going on with that thought. That's a brilliant thought, by the way. Very well put together and well worded, my friend. I like that a lot. And segueing on to that, it would also say, look, if all the biggest kings in our area, the biggest and most dangerous leaders go out here, just a couple of thoughts from that. One, you definitely want to be with them, because not being with them may be seen as a sign of weakness. And two, when they go out here, they're getting mad slaves, mad spoils, mad money, and you got to keep up with that.
Yeah, well, yeah, and also if you didn't enter into a confederation with him, he's sandwiched over there. You know what I mean? In between Elam and in between what would be Akkad, basically to the north of that, where you see Arioch at. So he would be sandwiched in between them anyway. So I mean, to me, it seems a little weird for him to fall in line under somebody, but it appears that's what's happening there. Yeah, them coming out of Elam.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, man. That's just fun thinking there, man. I love
Yeah, and
that.
that's just speculation on mine and Bross's part also. We're just wondering, especially if you have read through some of those Sumerian stones and the ones to the Lord of Arada and all that type of stuff. Very, very prideful guy. Super prideful guy. Like probably the most pompous guy that I've ever read writings from. I mean, the way he describes himself, it's almost enough to make you puke. But
right. King of the world.
All right, let's get back to it, because that's what I'm thinking though. I think Amraphel is Nimrod.
And I think that's a pretty solid speculation there, man. And with evidence on top of it, it's not just baseless theory there. There's other people that agree with you as well. And I mean, King of Shinar, it just sort of kind of all lines up. But yeah, man, this is I have a hard time wrapping my head around thinking about just massive amount of tribes and people going through. It's just little old me who's not 7 foot, 8 foot, 10 foot tall, and just thinking about all these guys going through the valleys and fighting each other and getting stuck in these slime pits is just.
Yeah, and then you have little giants fighting in a terrible terrain with all kinds of hazards everywhere. I mean, this must have been a bloody, massacre. That it's an incredible thing to imagine.
On the spiritual plane as well.
At the very beginning of this video doesn't even come close to what it is, but it's a decent visual representation to just kind of get your mind on it. But I'm thinking more like Clash of the Titans type of stuff. You know what I mean? Like all these what would have been called in the Greek mind demigods fighting it out here, and these powerful kings with these armies. It's almost like a Lord of the Rings type of thing. You have these armies that's mostly made up of men, and there may have been some giants on that side too. I venture to say most likely coming against these giants. It's almost like the battle of the humans versus the demigods for this area, and to subjugate these giants back to their rule. And I think if the giants would have had numbers even half of what these armies did, it would have gone the other way. But I think that they, and you can go back and look at the ancient text and see all the fertility rituals. I think they were having problems already multiplying after the flood.
Yeah, I think that's probably.
Thank God they did, because if they could have reproduced the way that the sons of Shem, Ham, and Japheth were, oh, good Lord, it would have been bad. We would have been the human race would have been subjugated. We'd be slaves to this day.
More than likely so. Now, when it comes to Sodom and Gomorrah, Zeboim and Bela and all that, I know we struggled to find out how many, if any, were Rephaim or giant bloodline. But as Gary was saying, from the Gnostic point of view, these cities of light often is synonymous with knowledge and wisdom, and that includes the darker arts. So I'm also envisioning in my head not just a physical battle, but also spells being casted, incantations, soothsaying, whatever you can think of. So it really is like a Lord of the Rings battle here, at least in my mind.
Yeah, this is really the battle of all battles after the flood. Now there's a battle between Nephilim before the flood that we see, that I suppose made this look like child's play, most likely. But this is the first one I've mentioned in the Bible, so it was significant enough to mention, not even just in the story of Lot, but to mention it at all. You know, you could have said Lot was taken captive by so-and-so, but to mention that this battle was going on, very significant, especially when you consider that these were giant bloodlines. Very interesting here. All right, now I'll tell you what. Let's go ahead and go through a little bit we have on the Wikipedia about the Vale of Sidim, and let's look at that a little bit, and then before we get into the Lot part, we'll go ahead and we got another video clip for you coming up to kind of sum this up and give another perspective on it.
Yeah. So you're wanting to read this section over here about the Valley of Sidim?
Yes, please.
Cool. So the book of Genesis explains that during the days of Lot, the Valley of Sidim was a river valley where the Battle of Sidim occurred between 4 Mesopotamian armies and 5 cities of the Jordan Plain. According to the biblical account, before the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, the Elamite king, Chedorlaomer, had subdued the tribes and cities surrounding the Jordan River plain. After 13 years, 4 kings of the cities of the Jordan plain revolted against Chedorlaomer's rule. In response, he and 3 other kings started a campaign against Bera of Sodom and 4 other allied kings.
All right, so up at the top, is there a map or anything that can give a visual for that area?
Nothing on here. No.
Unfortunate.
Unfortunate, for sure. Yeah, I know, call me Mr. Conspiracy Brain or whatever, man, but I have a strong inclination that this type of stuff has been very well hidden from us. Any type of, aftermath, whether it be bones, weapons, blood samples, whatever else you could have possibly found there.
Gary touched on that a little bit too, and I think that there's no way that something hasn't been found there. And,
no,
we've talked about this in private conversations for years. Put this back on. Sorry about that. We talked in private conversations for years about, wow, it preserves things very well. Salt. You know what the Dead Sea has more of than any other body of water? Salt.
Mm-hmm.
There has to either still be something down there, or there's been already found, like Gary was saying, and it's been hidden away, like a lot of things are. And just do a deep dive on giant bones in the Smithsonian. Enjoy. If you haven't looked into it, enjoy.
Have fun.
There's a lot there. But neither here or there, there has to be something there.
Well, dude, they call it the Dead Sea. I mean, if you think about it, it's the
there's not a lot that can live in there because it's so salty.
I think it's like a 40% salination rate or something like that. It's incredibly dense.
Yeah,
very, very dense water. But
I don't know if I sent it to you, but I know that there is some I know there is definitely something that I came across that said that where Sodom and Gomorrah actually is where the Dead Sea is now.
Yes. And when we do our Sodom and Gomorrah video, I cannot wait to talk about the theories of what made that land so low and it became filled with water, and what exactly brimstone really is and how that may have some type of effect on why the Dead Sea is, made up of what it's made up of, because the whole thing is just crazy, because Sodom has never been found. People say that they've found salt pillars, an assumption that it is Lot's wife. But
Well,
that's
yes. Well,
for-
you can see right here. It says Sidim is thought to be located on the southern end of the Dead Sea, and has been suggested by theologians that the destruction of the cities of the Jordan Plain by divine fire and brimstone may have caused Sidim to become a salt sea, what is now the Dead Sea.
Yeah, man. But we're not the only ones thinking this. Boy, I'd love to get some scuba diving equipment, a really cool waterproof camera, and get down in there. I mean, I'm sure it's been scrubbed from top to bottom for the past 3,000 years or however long it's been.
You would think, but you never know, man. You never know.
Yeah, if you could find one thing, I don't care if it's the dog tags, if you will, of one soldier, that's enough, man. That's enough to spark a fire, in my opinion. Anything could be found, and it would just be, it would blow up. You'd have black SUVs in your driveway within 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So
You'd all of a sudden get a really bad case of depression.
yeah. Funny how that works.
Yeah, you'll end up in the woods next to all of the people that used to work for Hillary Clinton.
Exactly.
All right, so all right, let's go down a little bit further.
Sure.
See if we see anything else interesting in this we can point out.
So this is just kind of going through some of these kings here. If you see anything in particular, just let me know. A lot of these guys we've already kind of gone through.
I will say this: if we go back up to the Amraphel, and there is a third person that right there where David Roll is at the beginning of that paragraph. Amar Sin, who's the third ruler of the Ur-3 dynasty, the third Ur dynasty. There is some people that suggest that is him. I did want to point that out just so nobody thinks I'm just trying to admit something and force the Nimrod narrative. There is people that believe that he was this Amraphel.
His name translates to the bull calf of the moon god. Interesting.
Sounds about right.
Wow. So we've gone through quite a few of these things, and these different kings here. There's something really cool. I mean, we don't have to spend much time on it right here, but they're called the the Chedorlaomer tablets, and we actually found them. And so it wasn't hard to find. It's at the bottom of this page here, but they're disputed. People say that they're from some point in time, and other people say they're from another point in time. But it would be very, very interesting to think that perhaps they are actually some type of writing that may have been recorded during the time of this campaign. You can see here, he talks about carrying off the plunder as he sat on his royal throne. He talks about certain gods being mad at the other gods. I'd love to read it all for you here, but it's broken up, obviously, because it's from a super old stone. But,
now, they say that these tablets were 1,000 years after Hammurabi, but we're not seeing how they got that because you can't date stone. There's things that you can do to have educated guesses, and you can date some of the things that you find around the stone and the strata there, but the dates on it is a little bit suspect to me. We won't go into it too much, but it's written from the perspective of one of those other kings, and it talks about Enlil and Anu and all of the traditional Sumerian gods.
Yeah.
You can find all that in there. Yeah,
it's cool,
Marduk,
man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The king of gods, Marduk. There's a lot in there, and it's written from that perspective. We don't know the date on it though, but it's really cool. If you guys want to check that out, go ahead. Just be prepared. It is broken up, and there are lines missing. So to get a good comprehension of the writing is almost impossible. But if you want to go through and check it out and piece it together, all good. Let's go back up and look at what it says about title there. Just we showed the map with him in Turkey, or Anatolia, I think at the time. So there we go. Let's read a little bit into this and why they think that.
Yeah. Sorry, I just got to move your image up here real quick. Okay, title has been considered to be a transliteration of Tutehalia. Wow, that's interesting. That's very similar to like a Legend of Zelda, like Hylia, either referring to the first king of the Hittite New Kingdom, Tudhalia, or the Proto-Hittite king named Tudhalia. With the former title King of Nations would refer to the allies of the Hittite kingdom, such as the Amuru and Mitanni, and the latter term Goyim has the sense of them, those people. Yeah, it's just it's comical. Yeah, those people, gross. If you even want to call them people, gives the sense of a people or tribe rather than a kingdom.
Right.
Hence, Goyim. Those people have created a state and stretched their power. That's in parentheses if you're just kind of listening. Others identify Goyim with the Hittites, Hurrians, and other groups in central Anatolia. According to Genesis Apocryphon, Goyim was located in the land between the two rivers, i.e. Mesopotamia, and the proposes, this guy here, Grinarod, I guess it's some type of scholarly figure on the matter, he proposes that the Goyim of title could be related to the islands of nations appearing in Genesis 10:5.
See, we didn't even read that before, but that's where I connected it to. Just out of the language used there, that's what made sense to me.
Yeah, me too. That's as soon as I saw King of Nations, it's like that's got to be it. The only other thought I could have had was, some type of symbolic figure for Satan or whatever. You know what I'm saying? The beast or whatever, right. King of Nations. But but no, I think that's spot on, man. Is that he may have been some type of Gentile king. The map that we saw, he's right there by the Isles of the Gentiles, anywho. And so,
well, when you read through Genesis 14, if you look at it in the NIT or the NLT, well, let's do it real quick. Let's go back to the Bible. And if anybody's still with us right now, it's these are people that are interested. So let's show it a little bit. So we'll get to this next clip that I've been teasing the NLT. There you go. All right. So when you go down here and look at title. I believe it's in verse 2.
Okay, thank you, man. It's so weird how I can't navigate through normal English because it's so
verse 1. Excuse me, and title of Goyim.
Ah, check that out. Check that out. Now
they actually translated as Goyim.
Yeah. So, quick question for you. Why is it spelled Goiim instead of Goyim?
I don't know. It's one of those things like when we were talking about Sidon and Tyre and the Sidonians, and then later, and I think it's even used even more. It's Zidonians with the Z.
Mm-hmm.
Why does it change? I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. When you're reading in extra biblical text. A lot of times the names will change by a letter, even within the same text.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a Hebrew scholar. I like to read concordances and try concordances. I like to read the concordances and check out the definitions and everything, but I don't know why. I don't know if it's another play on words or what, or why they did this in the NLT. But that is it is interesting, but I don't know why they did that.
Okay, I was just curious. It's when it comes to the New Living Translation, my knowledge is near to zero. I don't know the manuscripts or anything of that nature, where it all comes from. Right. So I was just curious to know if you had any knowledge on that. I've never seen that spelling before.
I hadn't either, and I was looking at it in my Bible app, and I was checking it on some other things, and the NLT does that every time that I could find.
Really?
But I didn't check too many other translations, but I did notice that they translated Goyim, but spelled it very differently. I mean, it should be the same. It should be the same root.
I'm curious to see just how many times it's used. This is almost more for me than it is for anybody else. Let's see. So it's probably lands in that one, or no, it would be national more than likely.
Yeah,
National. Okay, yeah. I was just curious to see maybe how many times it's used. And
Up at the
it's,
top, it tells you. I believe it's 530. Yeah,
yeah.
567 times and 511 verses.
Okay. Very cool.
And this is the only place that I see. Then it could be other places. I haven't gone through each one with a fine tooth comb, but I've never seen it spelt like that. But I thought it was interesting that in the NLT they actually translated it as Goyim in the English instead of nations or something like that.
Right. No,
All right, well, I'll tell you what, man. I've teased it and teased it. Let's get to this next video.
There we go.
One of our favorites, Rob Skiba, talking about this war, and let's just let him see for himself. He gets into it and gives a good description.
Sure.
Now, the audio gets a little funny at some parts, guys. This is a very old video.
The Genesis 14 war is, I call it World War I. I mean, it's a big deal. And Josephus tells you that this was a war of giants. These were giants that were fighting there, and led by Amraphel, who, if you study that out, Amraphel was a title for Nimrod. He went by the title of Amraphel, which was the dark sayer. Oh, here we go. Okay, let me put the screen share back up. Yeah, if you're looking at Genesis 14, it says, in the 14th year came Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him, and smote the Rephaim in Ashtaroth Karnaim, and you've already talked about the Rephaim last week being the Nephilim, and the Zuz in Ham, interesting that they mentioned Ham, and the Emims in Shavah Kirathaim, and the Horites in their Mount Seir unto El Paran, which is by the wilderness, and returned and came to En Mishpat, which is Kadesh, and smote all the country of the Amalekites and also the Amorites that dwelt in Hazazontamar, something like that. And they went out, the king of Sodom and the king of Gomorrah and the king of Admah and the king of Zobaim, the king of Bela, the same as Zoar, and they joined battle with them in the vale of Sidim with Chedorlaomer, the king of Elam, and with title the king of nations, and Amraphel, I put in parentheses there, and Nimrod, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elasar, 4 kings with 5. This is an epic battle. I mean, this is like Lord of the Rings going on here. This is a massive battle, 4 kings against 5. And Josephus comes right out and tells you this is a war of giants, and we just saw a bunch of them listed there. But when you look into their names, Chedorlaomer, if I'm pronouncing it right, it's an Elamite term, I guess. I was talking to Judd Burton about this, and he helped point some things out to me in his book, Interview with the Giant. Derives from Kuder Lagamar, which means servant of Lagameru, who was the Akkadian version of Ninurta, the god of war, who is Nimrod. You can trace Ninurta to Nimrod. So we see Chedorlaomer was essentially the right-hand man, just like primary general or whatever, General Patton, if you will, in Nimrod's empire, I guess. Title, his name means cast up from above or from the Most High. That's a pretty telling name right there. Amraphel, again, his name means sayer of darkness. Put in parentheses the rebellious one. He is Nimrod. Arioch is interesting because his name means lion-like, and it made me wonder if he was somehow tied to the later generations of the lion men of Moab that we read in 1 Chronicles 11:22. Don't know, just kind of putting it out there as something to consider. Then if we look at the Rabbins, these are all characters you talked about last week, and you did a great job of listing them out in your book, Corrupting the Image. Plug.
Thank you.
Yeah, another great book, by the way. The opposing army of kings came from Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zobaim, and Bela. And with the exception of Bela, or Zoar, a tiny town, these are all areas settled by the children of Canaan, which trace back to Genesis chapter 10, verses 6 to 20. Again, there's no mention of fallen angels anywhere in the picture, and yet you got giants all over the place. And this is 450 years after the flood, at a time when people were still living to be 500 years of age. So, you're talking early generations of people here that stepped off the ark. We got the 5 kings mentioned here: Bera, Bersha, Shinab, Shemeber, and the king of Bela. Bera means in the evil. Bersha means in wickedness. Shinab means father's tooth or change of father. I'm not sure what that means. Shemeber, name of soaring, literally the name of a wing. And Bela, the town, means swallowing. So again, you got some interesting characters lining up for this war. We find out Genesis 14:10 that they were basically 5 kings worth of armies were chased into the slime pits. Now, Josephus tells you in Antiquity of the Jews 1.9 that, first of all, they were the offspring of the giants that were fighting here, that the slime pits later became known as Lake Asphaltites or the Dead Sea after Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed. So I looked at that and said, wait a second here. I think the greatest archaeological find of all time is waiting for us somewhere in the southern area of the Dead Sea, if this is true. And so I contacted Dr. Judd Burton and a few others, and I said, hey, Judd, look at this. Look what I'm seeing here. And I showed him all my research on this. And I said, tell me what you think, because I'm thinking there's 5 very well preserved armies of giants with all that salt waiting to be discovered. I mean, 5 armies worth of giants. I mean, how cool would that be to find something like that? So that's really quick an overview of the Genesis 14 war, but I actually dedicated a whole chapter to it in my book if anybody's interested in seeing that.
That's fantastic stuff right there, because that is one of those chapters that people tend to gloss over because it's just plain tricky. I mean, you got all these names, you've got stuff that we don't really have much context for, but you've taken that apart pretty well and brought that out for us. So that's really cool. I just wanted to say that as we go through this show, we're going to continue to look at some difficult things, some places where we disagree.
That's good, brother.
And again, we hope that.
I'm not gonna lie, man. I miss when videos had audio like that. It takes me back to being 18 years old, up to like 3 o'clock in the morning. It makes me sleepy, man. I miss that.
I miss the good old days too, man. When this stuff was coming out, I guess I had been kind of really chasing after the truth for a few years at this point, just a couple of years, and I was learning so much, man. For the small amount of time that the quest for truth lasted, that was an excellent program that I think they had that on TV at one point too. But yeah, let's they've mentioned Josephus a few times, so let's go ahead and see what Josephus has to say. And if you can hear there, I know the audio is a little messed up. Rob Skiba talking about that's the archaeological find of a lifetime there. And the guy he mentioned was Dr. Judd Burton, who is an anthropologist, a Christian anthropologist, still around. I would really love to hear what Judd Burton had to say in response to that. There's got to be something still there. There has to be something there, God, man, what a blessing that would be to be able to get out there and really dive deep into the Dead Sea and see what you can find. Could you imagine like going down there and finding a massive shield or something and then bringing that up? Like how crazy would that be?
It'd be the Dead Sea Scrolls times 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Also, nobody would ever hear about it because anytime there's anything that confirms the Bible, the entire world rushes to take it off the map, to take it completely gone. That's why the Smithsonian gets rid of those bones. And guys, definitely go and do a deep dive if you haven't. Check out True Legends by Steve Quayle. There's all over the place, man. Smithsonian is a very, very corrupt institution as well. They've been propagating lies forever, and it's every single time. Anything they stand behind always contradicts the Bible. Always. They always try and contradict the Bible. Always. It never fails. It's like an institution that was set up to directly oppose Christianity.
You got to wonder who funds and founded that.
It's a rabbit hole. We'll do a video one day.
Maybe, yeah.
It's I don't know how many people would watch it because it wouldn't look very sexy, for lack of a better term. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just there's a lot there though. If people check it out, it'd be worth a watch for sure. We'll look into it, man. Right now, let's go ahead and get back to this, and let's go and see what Josephus said here. Bronson, I'm gonna let you read through it because my eyes can't do it.
Gotcha.
But yeah, let's read a little bit what Josephus had to say here.
Sure. So this is in Flavius Josephus' Antiquity of the Jews. We're going to start here at the Blue 34, 171. At this time, when the Assyrians had the dominion over Asia, the people of Sodom were in a flourishing condition, both as to riches and the number of their youth. There were 5 kings that managed the affairs of this county: Balus, Barsus, Cinnabar, Sumabor, with the king of Bela. Even he don't even have the name of it. And each king led on his own troops. And the Assyrians made war upon them, and dividing their army into 4 parts, fought against them. Now, every part of the army had its own commander. And when the battle was joined, the Assyrians were conquerors, and imposed a tribute on the kings of the Sodomites, who submitted to this slavery for 12 years. And so long that they continued to pay their tribute, but on the 13th year they rebelled. And then the army of the Assyrians came upon them under their commanders Amraphel, Arioch, Chedorlaomer, and Tidal. These kings had laid waste all Syria, and overthrown the offspring of the giants. There it is. And when they were come over against Sodom, they pitched their camp at the vale called the Slime Pits. For at that time there were pits in that place. But now, upon the destruction of the city of Sodom, that vale became the lake Asphaltites, as it is called. However, concerning this lake we shall speak more presently. Now, when the Sodomites joined battle with the Assyrians, and the fight was very obstinate, many of them were killed, and the rest were carried captive, among which captives was Lot, who had come to assist the Sodomites.
Well, there you go. He said it plain as day.
Mm-hmm.
They were giants, man. This was like Rob said, a Lord of the Rings kind of style war here.
Yeah.
You have all these giants and hybrids and these kings and most likely Nimrod. You have all these kind of dark figures in the history coming and fighting against each other.
Absolutely.
It kind of confuses me. It seems like all these people would be kind of in cooperation with each other. You know what I mean? But
there's me too.
There's always a power struggle, though, it seems like, and yeah, you would think there'd be a confederation with each other. It makes you wonder why they were warring in the first place.
You have to ask that question, and that's what I've been struggling with all week long in preparation for this episode. I looked for that more than anything else. Is what is the point? I mean, you know, we always hear about in the Christian body is that we're all of one body, the hand not to be jealous of the eye, etc. And then when you think about the body of the REPHAIM, who are going to be genetically inclined to go against, you know, the Christian or godly belief, you would think that birds of a feather flock together.
Yeah, it makes you think about that verse when Jesus talks about how Satan doesn't cast out Satan. You got to wonder, you know, in the physical realm, you know, and obviously it says that they were warring because they refused to pay their tribute and they rebelled against it, right? But you have to wonder, you know, they were getting tribute because they had already conquered them anyways, like Josephus said here, the Assyrians dominated that area. You have to wonder, maybe in the spiritual realm, if there wasn't a power struggle between the dark forces.
You have to. That's the only place my brain can go.
You would think so. You'd think so. Now, you know, we're humans, and we're talking about spiritual forces. They've been around a long time. We've talked about this a lot. They've been around a long time, and it may have been something like a means to an end. You know, you've got the Prince of Persia and the Prince of Grecia, and they, Persia and Greece would fight against each other, but it was really just, in the spiritual realm, a means to an end, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to wonder if you're looking at something like this here.
Yeah, I remember hearing somebody say this actually may have been Rob Skiba, again on the couch at 3 o'clock in the morning at 18. I remember hearing somebody say, when you look at the Dark Kingdom, it might be an appropriate vision to say that you've got your supreme leader, whatever you want to call them, Satan, Lucifer, whatever you want to call him, and then he is just this I don't care type of leader, right? Do what you want to do. Do as thy will shall be the law. And if Apollo wants to fight some other god, he's allowed to do so. You know what I mean? They can, and you see it in the Greek pantheon of mythologies that there are alliances between two gods. Somebody stole.
You'll see it all in any of the polytheistic religions, to where there's always gods warring against other gods and plotting against this one and doing this and that one, and kind of using humans as their playthings to accomplish their will on earth. You see that throughout all of them. I mean, the Sumerian, the Greek, Roman, all that.
Well, even in Enoch, he says he's going to turn your sons against each other. So this could have been some type of fulfillment of God's command that he's going to discomfort them.
Well, that's what I was referencing earlier in the antediluvian, what was kind of commonly known as the Clash of the Titans, or the what I mean, to where that war that was a pre-flood war, I believe it was 500 years before the flood, if I remember right, thinking about the timeline. So that right there, that verse you're referencing is exactly what I was talking about earlier with that pre-flood war.
One thing that I've always played with in my mind too, and this kind of gets into some really, I guess, picky sort of doctrine. So, just hear me out with this. But I've always wondered, obviously Nephilim, there's no helping them, right? They're chained and they've got a pretty dark future ahead of them.
Well,
But fallen angels. Let me say fallen angels.
The fallen angels would be chained.
Yeah, let me correct myself on that. Fallen angels. When it comes to Nephilim, and then further down the line, Rephaim, the genetics have to get watered down. And we see even in the time of David, he's getting help from certain people. Uriah the Hittite's on his team to begin with, and he helps certain armies, and he's got lion-like men on his side, whatever. As these genetics become less angelic and more human, I am going to assume, start to kind of have more passion and empathy for the human side. I mean, you probably love your mother, and if your mother was 100% human, you may empathize with some of her beliefs and some of the things that she gets down with. And so maybe the kings of Assyria at this time were looking at Sodom and Gomorrah and saying, well, you got Lot hanging out in your land. You're getting a little too friendly with the humans. You can't be trusted anymore. Maybe.
I don't know. I wouldn't. I tend to not agree with that.
Okay.
Just for the simple fact is that they always had humans around.
As slaves?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think that having a human around would necessarily warrant that.
Yeah, you're probably right, because in the narrative, and I know we'll get into this in a couple of weeks, but in the narrative, I am personally of the belief that the members of Sodom, I don't think that they were looking for homosexual pleasures at all. I think they were really trying to get that angelic DNA, is what I think they were after.
Yeah, I'm right in line with you there. Now, you can find writings, and we'll get into it in the Sodom and Gomorrah episode. I won't go too far into it, and I think that'd be a good teaser for next week, is that we'll talk about the motives of Sodom, some of the different, how can I phrase this? Well, I'll tell you what, we'll just get into it on the Sodom one. So that'd be a good teaser for the Sodom and Gomorrah video, because there's a lot there. And there was homosexual things, but not, that wasn't it. Mm-hmm. That wasn't everything that was going on there. But yeah, we'll get into it on that Sodom and Gomorrah video. I'll tell you what, man. Let's go back to the scripture real quick and see if there's anything else we want to cover. And we know we've covered it several times where they took Lot. Is there anything else in here that we can dive into real quick before we get up out of here for the night?
Let's take a quick look.
So talk about the tar pits and they fled to the mountains, the ones that survived. Let's see, the victorious invaders. So the 4 kings plundered Sodom and Gomorrah. So they took all the treasure out of the cities.
I guess we didn't even talk about Abram winning. I mean, Abram does sneak in and kill these guys with 318 people. That's an impressive feat.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's go up just a little bit because we have something else here too. Now our video right there. Our video last week was called Abraham and the Altar at Mamre. If you guys haven't watched it, I know it doesn't sound super appealing, but there's a lot of good stuff there. We make some good tie-ins at the end. It's actually one of my favorite videos that we've done recently. Me too. But as we talk here, is that Oak of Mamre was named, and that whole grove there was named after Mamre the Amorite. So Mamre and his relatives, in some texts in the NLT, in the KJV it says his brothers, Eshcol and Aner. So they were Amorites, but they were in confederation with Abraham or Abram at this time. And it makes you wonder if they came into confederation, because as we can go back up, they were fighting. Keep going up. Right there. The 4 kings were fighting against the Amalekites and also the Amorites. So you have to wonder if they entered into the confederation with Abraham, because the 4 kings were wiping out all the Amorites that were living in the Hazazon. Hazazon Lamar, I believe. Sorry, I'm not the best at these pronunciations. So you got to wonder if they were doing that.
Well, in the Revolutionary War, we saw, help from France. I mean, they had more money, they had resources, and if I'm not mistaken, we really needed their naval capabilities. I think that's where we were lacking.
Honestly, France at the time was broke, but they were broke at the time, but they came and helped.
That was right around. This is way off topic. That's right around Napoleon, is it not?
No, before.
Okay, got you. So, I'm thinking
Napoleon wasn't that long ago.
It seems so far, but a lot of we were talking about that the other day. A lot of that history just lining all those things.
Fun fact, guys, did you know that Abraham Lincoln was the president at the same time that the samurais were in Japan?
Yeah, that's just
that blew my mind. Yeah, it wasn't that long ago, man. And Napoleon was right around that time period as well.
Right. So while we were over here fighting with muskets and stuff, the samurais were still getting down with handfuls of swords and Japanese longbows, and pretty crazy, actually. Pretty crazy, actually.
Even back then, the West was still better. Anyway.
So they probably got their butts kicked, and they needed more funding. They needed more soldiers, more resources. And we know Abram had an immense amount of wealth at this time. And I suppose somehow or another, not sure how or why, he's got over 300 men that are trained for battle against Rephaim giants, man. Maybe that's why he was sitting so cozy in the land of Canaan. Like, what are y'all about to do to me? I got over 300 dudes here that can take down giants.
Yeah, well, the hand of God on him was the biggest part, too, because, God's the one that led him there. If he just led him there to be killed by some giants, it'd be pretty messed up, you know what I mean?
That's true.
And also, Abraham was no slouch, man. He had been around powerful rulers and dark rulers. He came out of the kingdom of Nimrod and went up to Hebron and then went down into Egypt and had, we covered that into chapter 13. Was it 13? I'm sorry. Maybe it's 12. That, he was in, talked to the Pharaoh. You know what I mean? So he'd been around powerful people and
that's true,
dark rulers. his whole life. You got to remember, Terah was, according to Jubilees, was the head idol maker for Nimrod.
Right.
And at that time was basically the emperor of the world.
Yes.
So, and I'm sure that he had plenty of contact and was around giants and Rephaim and all that type of stuff. So him stepping into the land of Rephaim would have been no different than him being at home.
I bet you he was a great negotiator. I mean, when you see the dialogue between for the grave of Sarah, the way he handles that deal and the money and all that stuff.
He was a very, very wise and seemed to be patient man. You see how he dealt when we talked about last week in the Abraham and the altar at Mamre.
Yes.
The way he handled the deal with Lot. He easy. Didn't he knew God was going to bless him no matter where he went. So he's just like, look, so there's nothing in between us. You pick where you want to go, and I'm going to go the opposite way. So you just take whichever one you want. Fine by me. I'm going to survive and thrive regardless. So just very patient. It seemed like he worked very well with the people around him. Abraham seemed to be a very likable guy.
Yeah. Yeah, everywhere he goes, he's making deals. I mean, that's a very, very good point there, man. The more we do this study into Genesis, Abram has never really been I don't know. He's not top 5 in my book. You know what I'm saying? He just never has been top 5 for me. But the more we do the studies, the more I really actually grow respect for him. He sat there with the 3 guests. We haven't got there yet. And he held his ground and had a great dialogue and contended with cool guy, man. Really cool guy. And I like him a lot. Yeah. Especially that narrative in Jubilees.
Yeah, I've always read about Abraham and had respect for him and understood he was the father of many nations and the Abrahamic faith and all that type of stuff. But if you ask me, like, who's some of your favorite characters from the scripture, I'm going to give you Joshua, Caleb, Enoch. I'm giving you that type of thing because I'm drawn to more of that type of mindset. Peter, I love Peter.
Yes.
There's not a more relatable guy to me in the Bible than Peter. You know what I mean? So he's the only one that hopped up and chopped off the soldier's ear. And I'm like, yeah, baby, get him. You know what I mean? Just like soldier for God mentality, man. And also was a very faulted person, which I'm a very faulted person. So I've always related a lot to Peter. So those are some of my favorites. And, Abraham wouldn't have been top 5, probably top 10, even though in importance, he's way up there.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, probably, second behind Jesus?
Yeah, he's the cornerstone, man. I mean, obviously not like Jesus is the cornerstone. But he's a founding pillar of the whole narrative, the Christian faith, everything.
Really, the world as a whole.
That's true.
Yeah. So, I think it's very important that we're taking the time to go through and really break down the stuff with Abraham, and maybe some other people out there will see you've got all these giants and all this cool stuff, and all this crazy stuff going on, and Abram's right in the middle of it, right? But think about the guts and the faith in God. Let's go back down to that 318 men. That after these 4 kings have just gone through and just wiped these giants, basically put their foot on their neck and didn't let up, plundered Sodom and Gomorrah, killed Amalekites and Horites and Zamzummims, and went through all this stuff. That's the people that Abram put together, 318 men, that army that just wiped out them. That's who Abraham went after. Yeah. So you just got to see the hand of God on this man and just the guts.
It only takes a small crowd, man. It only takes one. I mean, Jesus and 12 people turned the world upside down. It's maybe that is the message behind it all. Is that with faith in God and belief in the promise, and just a couple of people with you, you can stop the kings of the earth, the whole world. You can go over there and redeem the captured, and it's a powerful message actually when you put it like that. I'm glad you said that. 380. What's that?
Think about Gideon also. I mean, just
I was thinking
another
that too.
reference to a man of God that had faith, and God used a small amount of people to conquer a large amount of people. Was it 300 men, and then just the ones that would, 300 men, because those are the only ones that brought the water to their mouth with their hands.
Yeah.
I think it was the ones that brought the water to their mouth with their hands, right? Not the ones that lapped.
I always get mixed up on whether he
I
keeps
could be mixed up on that. Sorry, guys. So if I got that backwards, my fault. But just thinking about using a small amount of people to conquer a large amount of people, just with the hand of God on them. I mean, just incredible stuff.
It is incredible, man. It's a beautiful, beautiful story. Is there anything else you wanted to cover tonight before we close out of here?
Yeah, at the end here it says, he took all the goods back from Chedorlaomer's army. So maybe it was just Chedorlaomer's army. Maybe the other ones had split, and that's who Lot was taken hostage by.
Yeah,
which would make a lot more sense.
Certainly would. I've always had an imagination of what that looks like, because he comes in and he attacks during the night. You know what I'm saying? He divides his men. It's not like they came in just one big group. They may have surrounded the.
Attack from different sides in the middle of the night, caused complete chaos. They had just won a big battle too. So
they were drinking.
Right. So what's going on. They going through all the new women they've taken capture. They're dividing up all the goods that they got, and then after they do that, they take a woman and then take drinks. So they were probably celebrating and partying it up after their conquest, because they're heading back with all their captives and their goods that they've stolen. Well, not stolen, but I guess you could say that the goods that they've captured in their campaign here. So they were tore up and just celebrating. And plus, how confident are you going to be after your Confederation or armies just went around and wiped giants off the face of the earth? You're going to be feeling pretty comfy. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden you have enemies hitting the camp when you're all torn up and drunk and comfortable and well fed. And in the middle of the night, Abraham comes in with his men divided up, coming, it seems like, from all sides, like they're everywhere. And just panic ensues, and they just fight or flight, and they just decide to go because they don't know what's going on.
Right.
You know what I mean? They kind of got in that serene mode after the chaos of their campaign. They were on battling and marching, and they must have been exhausted too, man. And finally, just kind of kick back, take off their boots, sit down with a woman and their drink, and all of a sudden here comes Abraham. Blew the whole party up.
Yeah, it's I would love to see what that battle looked like, man. Truly, I would. All
right, brother. Well, let's get off the screen share and wrap this one up for the night. It's pushing. Well, I guess it's about 1:30 in the morning here, guys. But yeah, guys, this is the first war in the Bible, the War of the Giants. And I mean, it's the more you dig into it, the more fantastical it seems. And we can honestly go a little bit deeper. We could get into some, extra biblical sources that kind of spell out the same thing. We did a little bit with those Chedorlaomer tablets. But and guys, go check those out if you're interested in this and kind of see the other perspective on it. It is choppy. And you'll have to kind of piece some things together, but it's worth a read. It definitely is. But yeah, very, very interesting stuff, man. And as we continue, this is going to be our third video in the Saga of Abraham. There's probably going to be quite a few. Next week we have Melchizedek coming up in our next portion of Abraham. And this is all in the Genesis commentary. So guys, we talk about a lot of things, and a lot of times I'll say stuff like, oh, we covered this in this video or anything like that. Definitely go back and check those videos out. We build precept upon precept, line upon line. You see tonight, if this is your first time watching, we go into the definitions and we try and dig out as much as we can. And we've done that now through 13 full chapters, and now we're into chapter 14 of Genesis. So if you guys like this kind of content, definitely go back and check out some of the other videos. If you're just joining for the Abraham series, check out the first Abraham video, Abraham in the House of Idols, Abraham in the Altar at Mamre, and now this one, which will be the War of the Giants. and this is just going to keep on going. We're going to keep on doing this commentary in Genesis. If you guys have a certain specific topic you want us to cover, I know somebody said something about cosmology the other day. If you're interested in cosmology, we covered a good bit of that in our Genesis 1 commentary that we did. That's the first one in this playlist, if you go to our playlist section. And we cover it some there, but if you guys want us to cover a specific topic, or if it is cosmology, we have a whole lot on that. Like a lot on that. So if you guys are interested in that, let us know in the comments below. And if you know anybody that's into this type of stuff and into like the more deep things of the Bible, share us out. Let people know. We're building a small community here, and we really enjoy talking to you guys. Follow us on X. That's where we really talk back and forth and have conversations with people. Follow us over there, shoot us a message. And that's all for me for the night, man. I've really enjoyed this, and the more we dig into Abraham, the more I really, really, really appreciate Abraham.
Me too, man. I've enjoyed it so much. Thank you very much for hanging out with me tonight, Austin, and thank you to the viewing audience for doing the same. I just can't get enough of doing the Bible commentary, and I really enjoy that.
Butter, man. I love this stuff. I really do. This is what we started out doing just for me and Bronson, and as we've gone along with it, we found and learned a lot of things. As guys that not pride ourselves, but we feel like we know quite a bit about the Bible, especially in our generation. The more we go through it, the more we realize, man, we didn't know a whole lot, and we just keep on learning more and more and more. So hopefully you guys will join us and go on this. I hate to even use journey, but follow along with us as we go along, and we learn more and pull more interesting things out. And the more we go through it, the more really, really in-depth, cool things we find about history and archaeology, giants, and all kinds of stuff. So just come and join with us, and we do this every week, guys.
Yeah, man. Well, guys, chime in. Let us know what you thought about it in the comments, and we will see you next time on Ancient Echoes.